Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tombstone Tourist. This week, I'm at Woodland Cemetery in Richmond, Virginia. This is a large cemetery that is located in Henrico County, just northeast of downtown Richmond. This cemetery was founded sometime around 1917 when John Mitchell Jr. formed the Woodland Cemetery Association. Mitchell touted his cemetery as the most remarkable tract of land ever set apart for the African American community in the state of Virginia. Mr. Mitchell's cemetery was successful, but in the late 1920s, the Great Depression took its toll on the Cemetery Association's finances, and the care of the cemetery began to wane. Following the Great Depression, the cemetery was sold several times, and by 1973, their property was in a state of unkept disrepair. Gravestones were vandalized and the grounds were overgrown and unkept. Over the years, local individuals made several attempts to reclaim and clear the cemetery, but the job proved this to be too much. Then, in 2018, a local school teacher named Kathleen Harrell started another volunteer organization to clean up the historic cemetery. Mrs. Harrell's efforts were successful, and she founded a non-profit organization that was able to purchase the cemetery in 2020. I'm happy to see that during my visit during the early part of 2023, the cemetery has been restored and is very well kept. While some of the headstones are still in pretty bad shape, it looks like an effort is being made to repair those that can be repaired. Those that are beyond repair are being replaced. I have come here today to visit the final resting place of one of Richmond's favorite sons. Just inside and to the left of the front gate is the grave of tennis great Arthur Ashe. Arthur Robert Ashe Jr. was born in Richmond, Virginia on July the 10th, 1943. When Arthur was about 7 years old, his mother died suddenly. She was only 27. Arthur and his younger brother Johnny were raised by their father, who worked as a handyman and special policeman for the Richmond Parks Department. The family lived in the caretaker's cottage in Richmond's Brookfield Park. Arthur Sr. encouraged his children to excel in school both academically and in sports. Arthur was a small, skinny kid who was known around the neighborhood as Bones. Because of his slight build, Arthur's father would not permit him to play football, but the park had several basketball and tennis courts, and it was here that Arthur Ashe began to play tennis. Arthur was a natural at the sport. In fact, he was so good that he attracted the attention of Ron Charity, who was a part-time tennis instructor and student at Virginia Union University. Ron took Arthur under his wing and began teaching him the techniques of the game. Arthur attended Maggie Walker High School, where he continued to play tennis under the watchful eyes of Charity and Dr. Robert Johnson, who was just happened to be Thea Gibson's coach. Because Richmond was part of the segregated South, Arthur wasn't permitted to use the indoor courts and he could not compete against the white students. As a result, Dr. Johnson convinced Arthur to move to St. Louis, where he spent his senior year in high school at Sumner High School. It was here that Arthur Ashe was recognized as one of the country's top junior tennis players. He was the first African American to win the National Junior Indoor Tennis title. Arthur received a tennis scholarship to UCLA, where he was coached by the great Pancho Gonzalez. While at UCLA, Arthur was a member of the ROTC, and after graduating with a degree in business management in 1966, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army. He was assigned to the United States Military Academy at West Point, where he worked as a data processor and served as the head of the Academy's tennis program. He completed his required military service at West Point and was discharged in 1969. Arthur Ashe was one of the world's best tennis players. In 1963, he was the first African American to be selected to the United States Davis Cup team. Also in 1963, he won the NCAA singles and doubles tennis championships. In 1968, he won the U.S. Amateur Championship and the U.S. Open, becoming the first player to win both titles in a single year. That 1968 U.S. Open Championship was the first of his 5 Grand Slam championships. He won the Australian Open in 1970, back-to-back French Opens in 1970 and 71, and Wimbledon in 1975. In 1979, at the young age of 36, Arthur suffered a heart attack, which required bypass surgery. It was thought that Arthur would make a complete recovery, but in 1983, it was discovered that he would require a second surgery. As Arthur battled his heart issues, he became involved with the American Heart Association and was named the organization's national campaign chairman. In 1988, Arthur lost feeling in his right arm. During medical tests, it was discovered that he had contracted HIV as a result of a tainted blood transfusion from a previous surgery. Arthur chose to keep his illness a secret, but in 1992, he discovered that a national publication was planning on running a story about his illness. As a result, Arthur decided to preempt the story, and on April 8, 1992, Arthur publicly announced and acknowledged that he had contracted HIV as a result of a tainted blood transfusion. Less than a year later, on February 6, 1993, Arthur Ashe passed away from the complications of AIDS-related pneumonia. He was 49 years old. At the direction of Virginia Governor Douglas Wilder, Arthur's body lay in repose in the Virginia Governor's Mansion. His funeral was held on February 10, 1993, at the Arthur Ashe Athletic Center in Richmond. The service was officiated by Andrew Young. Following the service, Arthur Ashe was laid to rest here next to his mother in Woodland Cemetery. Well, I'm going to end this video here at the grave of tennis great Arthur Ashe in Woodland Cemetery here in Richmond, Virginia. If any of you ever saw Arthur play or have a memory of him, I hope you'll consider sharing them in the comments. And if this is your first time here, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel. And if you're so inclined, a thumbs up is always appreciated. Now, until next week, please remember, life is a wonderful journey. Be sure to take time and enjoy it. And I'll see you down the road. So long, everybody.